What paranormal activities have you witnessed? Not sure if this is considered paranormal, but when I get fevers as a child, I would always, in my fugue and pain-infused state, hear a man counting in a very deep voice. He would count from 1 and up. As the numbers get larger, the voice gets louder and more intense. It started to get less frequent as I grew older, and now I do not experience it anymore. I've brushed it aside as a recurring nightmare until only recently. I've learned that my sister would experience the exact same thing when she was younger as well. It's not the scariest thing, but it does send shivers down my spine trying to comprehend this.
Story 2.
One night me, my dad and a friend of his was standing outside watching the stars. After a bit of watching, what appeared to be a shooting star made a sudden and sharp 90-degree turn and then kept going for about 15 seconds, and then did an equally sharp and sudden 90-degree turn to disappear a few seconds later. We all saw the same thing, but none of us had a good explanation of what we saw.
Story 3.
I went with my best friend during high school for summer vacation to his grandparents, who live in the countryside in Japan. I stayed in his mom's old room, which has a small wall closet. Just above this closet was a smaller closet door. Weird design, but their house is old. The first couple of weeks I was pretty jet-lagged, and Japan is hot and humid, so I didn't really sleep at night. If my light was off at night though, I always felt uneasy about that small closet space. Something about it just felt darker than the rest of the room. Toward the end of the second week, I started to adjust to the time difference. And one morning I woke up and the small door was open. It was unsettling. But I closed it and just thought maybe it wasn't closed all the way and came loose. A couple of nights later, I woke up feeling uneasy. It was dark and I could kinda see. And I could see that small door was open. It was much darker than the rest of the room, like black, pitch dark. This was the first and only time I experienced paralysis. I was too scared to move, say or do anything. I just felt this darkness coming from there. I don't remember sleeping that night, but I must because I remember waking up the next morning. I told my friend about it, who said his mom told him about something like that too. When we got back home, I talked to his parents. His mom kinda joked with me and said, "So, I heard you met the ghost."
Story 4.
I work in a cemetery. One evening I had stayed late to do some catch-up work. I was taking pictures of some granite samples to have on my phone and had already locked up. I was alone. As I was holding my phone, I heard a doorway to the basement swing open and then slam shut, and heard footsteps go down the stairs. I froze. I thought for sure someone had come in, and I called out to see if it was someone from maintenance. No reply. I got scared because if it wasn't them, someone had broken in. I stayed still for a bit and listened, then called out again. Nothing. Finally, I got brave enough to look, and there was no one there. I peeked down the basement. Empty. All the doors were still locked.
Story 5.
My dad was in a hospital with a serious brain tumor. The hospital was about 40 miles from me and he was in no shape to even keep awake. One night I was chatting to a friend on MSN and he asked how my dad was. I turned to my left and I saw him sat in his chair just looking at me. And I replied, "I think he's okay. Sat in a room with me." To which my friend said, "Isn't he in the hospital?" And I looked again and I saw nothing. I never mentioned it to anyone. Told my friend I must have been seeing things. Dad survived and is still here today. Cut to about 21 years later, and I met up with my dad and just having a chat. He says, "Something been on my mind for years, son, and I can't shake it off." When I was in hospital, I remember being at home sitting in my chair. You was on the computer and you looked at me. Then I woke up in hospital, but it felt too real to be a dream. That's when I told him my experience.
Story 6.
When I was 6, I slept on a bunk bed in a room alone. The bottom bunk was empty, which was meant for my younger brother, but he was too scared of sleeping in a bed alone. So I was alone in that room that night. I remember a chilling feeling, then it suddenly got really warm. Probably because I was undergoing a night terror of some sort. Then I start breathing heavily and open my eyes and see the room is empty. My little night light in the corner of the room comforts me back to sleep. Except as I closed my eyes, I felt a heavy hand petting my shoulder. My eyes ripped open and there was no one in the room. As soon as I lay back down, the petting continued and I covered my head, just pretending to myself that it was my mom. It took me 12 years to stop sleeping with my head under the covers because of that memory. My mom, of course, knew a woman passed away in that apartment before we moved in, so she always believed it was that woman trying to comfort me.
Story 7.
Lights turning off and on, items flying off shelves and counters. One time when I was home at night by myself, I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I looked over and the bottom of one half of my scarf that I had draped over the top of my bathroom door was suspended at a 20-degree angle. At this point, so many things were happening in my apartment that I was terrified to be in it. I ended up getting dressed and going outside the building before I broke down crying and called my grandma to come pick me up. Another time, my friend and I were outside the building smoking when we heard what sounded like someone trashing my apartment. I'm talking chairs being smashed into the walls, shelves being tipped over. I was the only person living in the building at the time. We raced upstairs to catch whoever it was, but not a single thing was moved in the apartment. And all the other units were locked. When we first moved in, everyone hated coming into our building. They said it felt off. My ex and I never felt that way at first and thought everyone was exaggerating. By the time I moved, I wouldn't speak about ghosts or watch anything remotely paranormal in my apartment. Eventually, I watched the paranormal activities at a friend's and cannot describe the chill I felt. Similar things were happening in my own home. Haven't experienced anything like it since I moved.
Story 8.
My parents had flown to Houston when I was 11 years old to see a specialist for my dad's lymphoma. It had just returned from a remission, but there was no reason to think he was in any imminent danger. I was riding my bike home the day they were to fly back and stopped my bike in this ditch we used to ride down or up on our way back. When I got to the top, I felt a wave of emotion come over me, and without even knowing what I was saying, I told my friend I was riding with that my dad had just died. My friend was like, "What?" But I just knew. I rode the rest of the way home to find my grandparents boggling on our back porch. I stood there watching them in the doorway for a few minutes, unable to walk out to them. He had died an hour before I got home from school. No phone calls to the school, nor did I interact with anyone that knew prior to riding in the ditch. I just knew when that wave came over me. Again, there was no reason to think he was even remotely close to passing. He had caught pneumonia while in Houston and died from that. That was everything for this video. I hope you had a great time and thanks for watching.